Hi, welcome back to the Harpreet Singh Show, and you're watching Tania's Truth Talk. Boy, do we have an amazing couple of guests for you today. We have Victor and Eileen Marx. They are the founder of All Things Possible Ministries. It is a ministry that I personally endorse. I think they're doing amazing work for God's kingdom, and I'd like to welcome them to the show. So welcome, Victor and Eileen. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming on the show. And Victor, I have heard about you for quite some time, and I'm just absolutely thrilled with the type of work that you and your wife are doing in ministry. And you have quite a bit of a history and a background yourself, and you've come over some very big obstacles in your life.
Right. You know what? I wrote a book based on my story, and on the front cover it says, people would admire you for your success, but they'll relate to you because of your pain. And we've had success in our lives as adults. My wife was Miss Fitness USA, and I was a chief instructor of several martial arts schools and trained actors and stunt people and NFL players and whatnot. But the problem was my past started catching up to me, and that really became the big issue.
Explain that.
Well, enjoying our life, married, kids, but I started experiencing just kind of odd behavior, overprotective, and it kind of increased to where I was having flashbacks and I didn't know what was going on. And I had to seek the help of a counselor. And when I sat down and was honest with myself and my past, I had to walk through my childhood again, which I really wanted to leave behind. But I tell people, you know, stuff from your past is like holding down a beach ball. You can only do it for so long, and it will pop up, and your behavior tends to tell on you.
You know, Victor, it's ironic that you talk about that, and I'm certain that you're speaking about post-traumatic stress disorder. I can relate to you with that because I too had a really bad bout of that. As a matter of fact, only just about a week ago that surfaced, that hadn't surfaced for many years.
Yes.
And I was talking to your publicist the other day, and he had mentioned to me that you were recently on a radio show which extended for another hour, and people were calling in, and apparently some of the questions that they had asked you had triggered your post-traumatic stress disorder. Now you seem to be, carrying on this amazing ministry. How do you manage to work through that and do the work that you're doing and help so many other people when you have post-traumatic stress disorder?
That's a great question. I would say, overall, the grace of God. I mean, we would just say the grace of God, the support of family and people around me, that when I do get triggered, when I start struggling, we recognize it for what it is. And we realize that, if I start struggling, it's just going to be for a moment or a short time. It's not going to be for days, weeks, and months. So that helps us to get through it. And let me give the viewers just a background. My father was a drug dealer and a pimp, that when my mom got pregnant, he didn't claim me as his kid. As a result, my mother would marry 6 times. I went to 14 different schools, lived in 17 different houses. But the thing that really made a huge impact on me was when I was about 5 years old. I was caught by a child molester and sexually assaulted and left for dead in a commercial cooler. So that was really the foundation of my life that I tried to outrun, and I couldn't. It would come back to haunt me in various ways. And I tell people, when you start to have crazy thoughts, it doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means maybe you need to revisit some things to get them right.
Right. So people can find out more about your story by going to victormarx.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Victor Marx with an X.
Yes. .com. Now, you're going into the youth prisons, and you're dealing with people that are, gang leaders, murderers, and things like that. And I'm certain that they too suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So what would you tell these adolescents that you're working with, or just any of the viewers who might be watching today and who also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder?
First I would say you got to be honest with yourself and educate yourself to find out what this challenge is, because a lot of people don't even know about it, and yet they're suffering. I mean, it's torment and suffer. But with
Yes.
just a little bit of education, finding out what PTSD really is, how it varies in its effect on people. It could be minor, it could be extreme. And let me give you a minor example that still affects my wife. She was in a car accident where she was, rear-ended on an ice road, and boom. Now, when I come up to a vehicle, she instinctively jerks back, even though I know there's no way I'm gonna hit it. That's her reaction to what happened from the trauma of a car accident.
Right.
And it's the same way emotionally when someone's experienced trauma, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, even mental abuse, that's just habitual. It affects a person's mind so that when they get triggered,
Right.
they react instead of responding. And how you know there may be issues is your reaction to something somebody says or does disproportionate to what the offense is. So, I mean, if you're flying off the handle and just railing somebody and they simply bumped you, that may be an issue you need to deal with.
Yes, I agree. And, myself being a believer in Jesus Christ, I mean, I had post-traumatic stress disorder for years, but I found that one thing that really helped me with that was by getting deliverance and inner healing.
Yes.
Did you find that with yourself as well?
I did. That was the part. Eileen, why don't you tell them what I end up having to do?
Well, Victor ended up going to see a trauma specialist who understands the spiritual aspect of healing.
Right.
So she incorporated not just the mental, emotional, but the spiritual, which is key as well. And that's something I would say is if somebody is struggling, don't be afraid to get help by trained people who know what they're doing.
Yeah, what worked really well for me in my situation was EMDR. It is a form of therapy that not everybody can do. You need to have a solid education because there are a lot of people wanting to help folks.
Right.
But you have to be really careful who you go to.
Right.
Because somebody can really have a great heart and even know the word, but if they're not used to someone who has mental issues, they'll misdiagnose or they'll even say, "Oh my gosh, that's a demon."
Right.
When it may not even in fact be that. It may just be a broken part in somebody's soul, of the trauma they experienced as a child, and I call those folks soul surgeons, where But EMDR is a tested, proven. Harvard did a study on it. It is one of the best types of therapy to help people deal with past traumas. It lowers incident of anxiety tremendously.
Okay.
I mean, tremendously.
That is really good to know for the viewers to know, and myself as well. Now, Victor, with you and your wife going into, the prisons and stuff like that, do you have any specific story that was really memorable, that really sticks out to you, and where Jesus Christ was just moving?
Yeah, we have a bunch. One that comes to mind right now. I mean, I was just in a facility night before last, and I shared this story with a group of boys. I went to a facility, and there was I think he was 16 years old at the time. He was doing 2 years. It was a teenager who was doing 2 years. And I asked him, why did you get committed? He said, well, I was at school, and a guy started picking on me. And he said, I don't know, I snapped. And he said, I got in a fight, and I started beating this guy, and I couldn't stop. And I ended up picking him up. He picked him up, and he broke his back over his knee.
Oh, my.
And I said, my goodness, man. I said, but was he threatening to kill you? He goes, no, he just was messing with me. I said, do you know why you went so extreme? He said, no. And then I asked him, tell me about your background.
Right.
Tell me about your dad and mom. And he said, well, and he had never told anybody publicly like that, but he said, you know what? When I was about 11, he said, my dad walked in my bedroom with a shotgun. He said, I was playing video games, and my dad knelt down and put the shotgun under his chin, and he pulled the trigger. And he said, I watched my dad kill himself in front of me. And I looked at this young man and said, buddy, I said, have you ever dealt with that? Have you ever worked through that? And he said, no. And I explained to him his response to that kid has got to be so much anger,
Right.
built up in him.
That he just, it's kind of like you put the rat in the cage and you can keep poking and poking and poking that rat, and eventually the rat's just going to lose it and bite,
Yeah, yeah. And you know what, this guy, the good news is he ended up giving his life to Christ.
Oh, my.
He got counseling. He got out of youth prison and ended up going to college and playing football. And, he's an adult now, but that's one that just comes.
That is an amazing success story to hear, and that's good. Victor, I want to get into your movie coming up after the commercial break, so we're just going to take a quick commercial break. Tune in after the commercial break to Tania's Truth Talk on the Harpreet Singh Show.